Trump administration is trying to put Harvard University, the nation's oldest college, out of business. Today, we learned the White House is set to pull all the remaining federal funding that flows through the school. That's about $100 million, according to estimates. That is in addition to the billions of dollars in research funding, including extremely crucial biomedical research, the administration has already frozen at the university. And of course, last week, the White House halted Harvard's ability to enroll international students, which the New York Times reports could impact about 25% of the student body. Here's the thing. People all over the world desperately want to come to the U.S. to study because this country has for decades now offered the gold standard in terms of higher education globally. It's one area of just genuine American exceptionalism. And so international students are a huge boon to American universities and to the American students at those universities and all the economic activity around it.
We don't often hear much from Donald Trump's family. Quite surprising for someone who claims to champion family values. Usually, they make headlines only when there's controversy, questionable business dealings, moments when they seem to benefit from Trump's presidency, or when Donald Jr. engages in one of his attention-grabbing hobbies. Other than that, they tend to stay out of the spotlight. One person especially quiet is Melania Trump. She rarely makes public statements, and most of the time, she's only mentioned in passing, usually with comments about how rarely she's seen. That's why it was so surprising when Melania finally broke her silence during Trump's administration. She spoke out for the first time, and her comments touched on a growing issue that's not only affecting Donald himself, but also casting a shadow over the entire Trump family. But before we dive into what she said, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to like this video, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It means a lot and helps us keep creating content like this. Now, to understand why Melania's statement matters, we need to back up a bit. We're going to look at what Donald Trump is so upset about right now, and why that frustration is even spilling over onto his youngest son. And it all starts with this video of Chris Hayes analyzing Trump's recent attack on Harvard.
Donald Trump wants the most powerful and legendary institution in higher education in this country, arguably in the world, to bend the knee to his whims and become a kind of controlled asset of MAGA. That is the goal here. And yes, let's be clear, it's pretty hard to root for an elite institution like Harvard, right? With a $53 billion endowment. But this attack on the university isn't really about Harvard at all, qua Harvard, and it isn't happening in a vacuum. It is the latest escalation in the administration's ongoing day-by-day battle, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I really believe it, to destroy all independent sources of knowledge and fact-finding in our free and open society. As the writer Adam Serwer put it in his latest piece to The Atlantic, by destroying knowledge, Trumpists seek to make the country more amenable to their political domination and to prevent meaningful democratic checks on their behavior. Their victory, though, would do much more than that. It would annihilate some of the most effective systems for aggregating, accumulating, and applying human knowledge that have ever existed. Without those systems, America could find itself plunged into a new dark age. To that end, we are seeing the administration run this playbook towards, again, any independent source of authority. The White House has already pulled $400 million in federal grants for Columbia University, for example. It might try to claw back even more money this week after announcing trumped-up charges of civil rights violations against the school stemming from campus protests about Israel's war on Gaza. In a new piece for The New Yorker, Jelani Cobb, the dean of Columbia's journalism school, quotes one expert who taught at both Columbia and Harvard as saying, quote, "I've studied McCarthyism's impact on higher education for 50 years. What's happening now is worse." Cobb adds, quote, "The biggest mistake that some universities have made in responding to the White House has been to presume it is operating in good faith."
The Republican Party has been pushing back against intellectualism and higher education for years, but Donald Trump's recent attack on Harvard takes things to a whole new level. And it's not just because he seems to resent people who are more educated than he is, which, let's be honest, is quite a lot of people. There's something deeper going on here. Trump's open hostility toward Harvard, the oldest university in the country, isn't just about his personal insecurities. It's also about the fact that Harvard has become one of the few prominent institutions willing to speak out boldly against him and his administration. That defiance clearly doesn't sit well with him, and it's part of what's fueling this clash. To really understand what's happening, though, we have to take a look at a revealing clip of Trump talking about his son, because that's where things start to get personal.
Is Barron's aptitude, in your view, business or politics?
Maybe technology. He can look at a computer. I try turning off his car, turn it off. I turn off his laptop. I said, oh, good. Now. And I go back 5 minutes later, he's got his laptop. I said, how'd you do that? None of your business, Dad. No, he's got an unbelievable aptitude in technology.
Wow, this kid's a genius. We've got a real Goodwill Hunting situation on our hands. Has turning a computer off and on earned someone a Nobel Prize yet? Because if it has, Barron Trump's a lock. Can we just give this kid an award already? That seems to be how Donald Trump views his son. And honestly, it's kind of refreshing to see him speak highly of someone other than himself. He clearly believes Barron is one of the brightest minds out there. Naturally, he thinks his son should attend one of the best universities. Trump's got nothing against NYU, but let's be honest, it's not Harvard or MIT, and that's where things get interesting. There's been a lot of speculation recently about why Barron, unlike the children of many past presidents, hasn't gotten into Harvard. Some are suggesting that's exactly why Melania Trump has unexpectedly stepped into the spotlight. The rumors exploded online last week, with people speculating that Trump's recent hostility toward Harvard stems from the university rejecting his son. In a rare public statement, Melania Trump pushed back hard against those claims. She denied that her husband's animosity toward Harvard had anything to do with Barron being turned down for admission last spring. This all comes in the wake of Trump attempting to withhold $2.65 billion in federal funding from Harvard and trying to block foreign students from enrolling, moves that were later reversed by a US judge. As the drama unfolded, the internet lit up with theories, and for once, Melania decided to speak up and set the record straight. Melania Trump's spokesperson, Nick Clemens, told the Palm Beach Post that many Facebook users were quick to react to Donald Trump's extreme actions on Friday. Some even speculated that Trump's animosity toward Harvard stemmed from jealousy, specifically that former President Barack Obama's daughter, Malia, graduated from the prestigious university. Clemens was firm in shutting down the rumor mill, stating, "Any claim that Barron, or anyone on his behalf, applied to Harvard is completely false." In fact, after receiving offers from several colleges, Donald Trump announced last September that Barron would be attending NYU's Stern School of Business to pursue a business degree. The annual tuition at Stern is nearly $62,000. Still, conspiracy theories spread quickly. One particularly enthusiastic Facebook user, Doug Wall, claimed that Harvard's supposed rejection of Barron was behind the uproar. Whether or not Barron ever applied, Melania's rare decision to publicly weigh in on the matter added more fuel to the fire, and even drew criticism from those who felt she inadvertently put Barron in the spotlight during a tense political moment. It all underscores just how disconnected the MAGA movement has become from the values it claims to represent. On the campaign trail, Trump and Republican leaders often talk about being the party of common sense. But lately, what's been on display isn't grounded in facts or reason. It's driven by personal grievances, emotion, and a sense of entitlement. Take their relentless focus on issues like trans kids participating in sports. These children just want to play alongside their peers, yet they've become political targets, because, for some in this movement, anything that challenges their worldview becomes a threat. This isn't about principles anymore. It's about power, resentment, and control. It's a self-absorbed political machine, propped up by outrage and driven by the pettiest man in modern American politics, a man who, somehow, is running for president again. The recent wave of pardons Trump has received only makes one thing clearer. This movement isn't fighting for the values it claims to uphold, it's serving itself.
Now, Trump pardoning random corrupt MAGA officials, which is what this is a case of, is a scandal unto itself. And Jenkins is far from the only example. But it's especially galling when you consider the people Trump actually does want to prosecute. I mean, it was just last week when Trump called for investigations into several celebrities, Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce, Oprah, claiming that their endorsements of Kamala Harris during the 2024 election somehow constituted illegal campaign contributions. Now, all of those claims appear to be completely baseless, and forgive me for this one, ludicrously Trumpy. But if Donald Trump is going to claim he really, really cares about illegal campaign contributions, well, then maybe he shouldn't have just pardoned a corrupt sheriff who took illegal campaign bribes to give unqualified people positions of power. Maybe not. And it's not just this one case. I mean, on almost every issue Trump claims to care about, there's a pardon that proves he doesn't really care at all. For instance, Trump and his presidential BFF, you know who I'm talking about, have spent the last several months claiming they are really concerned about so-called waste and fraud in America's entitlement programs. We've covered here on this show how Trump and Musk's changes to Social Security have made it significantly harder for seniors to get help with their benefits, all in the name of rooting out fraud. We've also covered how Trump's big ugly bill in Congress would make dramatic cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, also in the name, according to them, of course, of rooting out fraud. I mean, just listen to the way they talk about this basically anytime they are asked about their highly unpopular cuts to these programs.
We have not cut Medicaid. What we're doing, Margaret, is working on fraud, waste, and abuse.
We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
I mean, that clip. We're not making any cuts is basically their message. It's all about finding fraud in their definition. And anyone who complains about it must be a fraudster themselves. Now, given their intense concern surrounding this issue, a spoken concern, I should say, you would think the Trump administration would be very sensitive about associating itself with anyone even remotely connected to actual entitlement fraud, right? No, of course not. Because last month, Donald Trump pardoned this guy, Paul Walzak. And what was Paul Walzak convicted for? What was his crime? Here it is from the New York Times. Between 2016 and 2019, Walzak withheld more than $10 million from the paychecks of his employees under the pretext of using it for their Social Security, Medicare, and federal income taxes. Instead, he used some of the money to buy a $2 million yacht and to pay for travel and purchases at high-end retailers, including Bergdorf Goodman and Cartier. In other words, this guy took money from the paychecks of his employees that was supposed to be paid into their Medicare and Social Security savings. It was their money. And instead, he literally bought a yacht and shopped at Bergdorf. And today, the New York Times has new details about how the pardon for that fraudster came to be. The Times reports that Walzak submitted a pardon application to President Trump around Inauguration Day. Then his mother, and here's the key part, was invited to a $1 million person fundraiser dinner last month that promised face-to-face access to Mr. Trump at his private Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. Less than 3 weeks after she attended the dinner, Mr. Trump signed a full and unconditional.
Who still thinks Donald Trump is even remotely in touch with reality? Buckle up, because what we're witnessing is nothing short of a full-on parade of egomaniacs, oddballs, and self-absorbed billionaires who genuinely believe the universe revolves around them. These are the kinds of people who act like they personally discovered gravity, only to decide it's optional. And yes, we're going to keep calling out this circus every single day on this show. Because when you've got a former president who thinks windmills cause cancer, believes losing an election means he won it twice, and treats bankruptcy like a trendy lifestyle choice, you don't need deep political analysis. You need a comedy-infused reality check with absolutely zero chill. Here's the truth. Donald Trump doesn't live in the same world as the rest of us. He operates in a delusional echo chamber where every insult is a government plot, every joke is a coup, and every meme about him is clearly the work of a deep state cabal funded by George Soros and TikTok algorithms. And floating right alongside him, Elon Musk, selling rockets, cryptocurrencies, and Mars colonization fantasies like he's hosting a late-night infomercial written by someone who forgot Earth still exists. These guys treat public criticism like it's a personal vendetta, rather than what it actually is, a much-needed public service announcement. We're living in a time when billionaires act like prophets, politicians treat truth like a suggestion, and comedians have become the last honest voices in the room, saying out loud what most people are only brave enough to whisper. So, no, we're not backing down, we're doubling down. Because someone's got to keep the receipts, speak the truth, and remind these self-proclaimed geniuses that facts still exist. And no, they can't be paid off or tweeted away. And honey, let's get one thing straight. We're not backing down. We're not sugarcoating it. We're not pretending Elon Musk is some misunderstood tech messiah, or that Donald Trump has ever read a policy brief without a teleprompter, shouting it back to him like it's bedtime for toddlers. Nope. We're here to keep exposing the absurdity, to keep roasting the chaos, to keep reminding the world that leadership isn't about how many times you scream, "I win." It's about whether you actually know what you're doing before you grab the mic and demand attention. Because, let's be honest, when your whole brand is built on illusion, being called out doesn't feel like satire, it feels like a solar flare slamming into a man-made sun built from ego and empty promises. Meanwhile, Trump's still pacing around Mar-a-Lago, yelling at a portrait of himself like it cheated on him. And Musk? He's out here Googling how to buy Twitter, again, like it's a midlife crisis wrapped in code. But us? We're just here with the receipts, armed with facts, a little bit of timing, and a whole lot of flair. Because we're not just calling out the man. We're calling out the myth that power equals wisdom, that money buys leadership, and that fame qualifies you to run anything more complex than your own Instagram filter. And if you love what we do here, if you believe in unfiltered truth, sharp humor, and calling BS exactly when it shows up, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Drop a like. And if you made it all the way to the end, leave a BS in the comments like you're texting your ex and hoping they finally realize what they lost. Because when your version of success looks less like leadership and more like a tantrum wrapped in gold-plated nonsense, someone's got to step up and remind the world what real sanity sounds like. And trust me, darling, that's exactly what we're doing every single day.